No, the small one. That's it.
This one?
No. That is what?
You have an audio file.
I know, but I'm not listening.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna script the
Start
audio.
down, huh?
זה רעב, מה נשמע?
Are we recording?
Yeah, we're on.
You're on. Okay.
Amen.
Sort of like touch upon what we left off last week. We started learning the Akdoma just before. It's not the Akdoma, but actually the Torah before the first Torah, and that is the of Rabbi Shimon of Lekutei, a revelation from the greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And if you recall, last week we learned that when Chazal came to kill B'Yavna, they said that the Torah will be lost, will be concealed from Am Yisrael. And it's based on the Nevuah that says, Anochi Astei Astin. I will put under, I will double wrap, so to speak, in concealment. And therefore, we said that the Torah is going to be forgotten, and we spoke about how the Torah being forgotten is not necessarily the fact that we don't have a Gemara or a Mishnah or Chumash or anything else, but rather that we look at it and we don't see it. You know, in Tehillim he says about the idols. It says Einayim lehem velo yiru. You know, Yadayim lehem velo yimishun. Yadayim velo yelechu. Yadayim velo yimishun. And Pelehem velo yidaber. It's mentioned, you know, one organ after the other. You know, they have eyes and they won't see, and they have hands and they don't touch, and they have legs and they don't walk, and it's a little bit redundant. And afterwards it says, Kamoim ye'osem kol asher b'teach b'hem. Or is it David HaMelech now suddenly resorts to shouting out, to cursing out anybody who was and it's a little bit incongruous, the first part and the second part. This is like, first of all, he starts technically by saying, listen, the idols are useless. And he ends up by saying, you know, may all those that trust them will be what? But the answer is, at least one of the possible answers, of course, is the fact that if you said a naim lamb, you said they have eyes, that how can you say they don't see? If they don't see, if they're not capable of seeing, they're not really eyes. It's just painting of eyes or sculpture of eyes, but not really eyes. In order to be eyes, they have to be able to receive an image, to record an image, to experience an image. If you say Oznaim Lem, you can't say Velo Yishma'u, because otherwise it's not an Oznaim. The same thing with the mouth, the same thing with the hands, the same thing with feet. Only when you're not connected to the essence, or you're not connected to what's really going on. Let's say when the Goyim live in this world, all right, and they have cameras, but what those cameras see is something totally superficial. It's nothing really to do with anybody's lives. It has nothing to do with the tachlis of anything. So it is eyes that see. But what they see is movies or sports or whatever. That's not what life is about. So in Naimlam, yes, they have eyes, they have cameras. V'lo yirau, but they don't see. They don't see that the life of a person in this world is temporary and it's fleeting and it's irreversible. And it's an incredible chance of acquiring netzach, acquiring infinity, and they're just busy with nonsense, just with utter, total nonsense. This is the pshat of enayim lehem v'lo yirau. Rabbeinu says, with every step that I take, I'm going towards Eretz Yisrael. Which means I'm going closer to Kodesh Baruch Hu, I'm getting closer to the Tachlis. Any stepping which is not, any travel which has not to do with that, Ragleim v'lo yalechu, they have feet, but they're not good, they're not getting anywhere. David Melech says, when you trust this, when you get into this kind of mode of existence, you become like that. It's not, getting all, foaming at the mouth, hysterically, like, whoa, what are they doing? Blah, 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 blah. No, he's saying it's just simple, They have these mechanisms that can record images, can record sounds, that can move at close to the speed of sound or more, can escape the atmosphere, come back or not come back. Can do all these things. But they're not seeing, they're not hearing, they're not talking, they're not moving, they're not touching. And anybody that gets into that, lives in that mode, will become, you're going to look at the world and not see anything that's really going on. So I see the Torah that the Torah will eventually be forgotten. That means that what the Torah is about. Because the Torah is the Torah of Kodesh Baruch Hu is one thing. You learn Torah, and Baal HaTanya says, when you learn what the Torah says, you learn the will of Kodesh Baruch Hu. He says that Baal HaTanya says, if Reuven says this, and Shimon says this, and the din is, this and this, he says there's no need for that happenstance or that particular example to ever happen. It's just that the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that when Shimon will say this and Reuven will say this, the din is so and so. And when you learn this, you learn what the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. He says, and your mind wraps around that will of Kadosh Baruch Hu and is enveloped in, is cloaked in the will of Kadosh Baruch Hu, and it becomes one. That's why the Torah is called lechem. The Torah is called bread. Lechu lachamu belachmi. It's called bread because what is bread? Bread is when you eat it, it still doesn't give you anything. It may give you a feeling of being full, of satisfaction, but it's not. It doesn't really give you the nourishment here. When does the bread give you what it can give you? When it becomes one with you. When it breaks down to all the nutrients, it goes to every cell of your body and gives you chayas. When you become one with the Torah, you become one with Kodesh Baruch Hu. But this is when you actually get what the Torah is about. Chazal says, "Asida Torah tishtokach mi'Yisrael." The Torah is going to be forgotten. It's going to be a situation where the learning of the Torah is going to be mechanical. of course, a lot of people are going to fall away because of this.
But it can't be mean without heart, without regesh, without...
Right, without touching the essence of the Torah, without touching the godliness of the Torah. It's going to be about being firm. It's going to be about belonging to a certain camp. It's going to be about chitzon. It's going to be about superfluous existence. You're going to see, but you're not. You're going to have eyes, but you're not going to see. You're going to have ears, but you're not going to hear. You're going to have mouth, but you're not going to talk about what is really the tachlis. And Reb Shimon says, no, it's not going to happen. There's going to be a possibility. There's going to be an accessibility. You will be able to touch the essence of Torah. And he brings the raya from a pasuk. Ki lo sishoka mipi zara, for it should not be forgotten from the mouth of his offspring. And we learned how this, through the process of remez remez, an illusion to an illusion, to Reb Shimon. And we said, how is it possible that Chazal said that there will be no access to Torah? Torah is going to be forgotten, and from a nevuah. And Reb Shimon says, yes, it will be from almost the same nevuah. Just it's like a verse weiter. And we said that the difference is that what Chazal said is what happens without the tzaddik, and then what happens when there's a Reb Shimon, when there is the tzaddik in the picture. Just like to, in order to talk about this particular inyan a little bit, I'd like to go over the askama of the Choizer of Lublin in the very, very beginning of Lekutei Moharan. Askamas Arav HaMaor HaGadol HaKodesh Ateres Tiferes Yisrael Menorah Tehoiro Or Shivas HaYomim Or Ba'ir V'Shchokim Or Tzach HaMetzuchtzach Or Tomir V'Ner Lam Kodesh HaKodeshim HaMfurson B'chol Katzvet Tevel L'Shem UTehilo Moreinu Yaakov Yitzchok Milublin Zecher Tzaddik V'Rocho Baal Mechaber Sifrei Divrei Emes V'Shas Sforim. And this is what the Choizer of Lublin is saying. Here is a letter written to me, written with the finger of Hashem. Asher shorach alai, that was sent to me, Chad min kamal, one of the elders, one of the ones from before the ancients. Alo mechutoni chavi v'yedidi Arav HaMoyer HaGodol Ish Kodosh Moifes Ador Ner Yisrael Potish HaChozak Omod HaAminim Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Harav Nachman Ner Yoel Likutim Meleim La'amim Maleh v'Godosh, sending me a likutim here that are completely full, overflowing, B'iras Elokim, with the fear of Hashem, Bidvor Muskolim Sechel Elokim, with words, with issues that are infused with a godly sechel. V'yamti ba'em al nachon, and I have looked into them, I've seen it through. V'ineh me'od yoshu be'eino dvor nichbodim ka'elo. I liked it. V'leis din tzarech boishesh, there's no reason to hold it up. Just go ahead with this. And then he says like this: Ki advorim me'elehen yeidun, because the things will give testimony in and on themselves, by their own existence. V'yagidum dvar emes la'amitoi, and will say and will profess a dover emes la'amitoi, a thing which is emes la'amitoi lefi inyon, according to its singular inyan. He starts with advorim elem in plural, the issues spoken here, the various things that are spoken here, dvorim, plural, will profess, and then he goes to singular, dovo emes lamito lefi inyonoi. They will profess something which is a single thing, which is emes lamito lefi according to its own inyan. V'divrei Elokim, and then he goes back to plural. And then he says like this: Ki ma ani u'meh chai, what is me and what is my life? Shofel v'niz v'chadol ishim, lowly and worthless. Me'olam lo halachti b'gdolos v'floros mimeni. I have never gone, doing things which are way beyond me. Liten askomer sforim chadoshim, to give askomer of new sforim. And then what does he say? Omnam, however, le'ahavas ha'emes amarti, because of the love of truth, for the intense love that I have for truth, amarti anvatisa demar garmali, the humbleness of Rabbi Nachman has caused me that, has brought me to this, v'hineni min ha'maskimim, and I'm also giving askama. And then he proceeds to give the askama. When you take a look here, it sounds strange. I mean, and sometimes we lean towards saying, this is something really, really long ago, and the style is like, almost medieval in nature. It's very flowery, so we don't really have to understand what is going on here. It's just like, it means that it's a cool thing. It's good stuff. But the emphasis is that it's a limud b'fnei atzmai, and there are a few things, few inconsistencies over here, which we can look into, because it is the chozer of Lublin, and every single word here is a Torah Shlema. Why is he saying? Why is he going at V'rim Elem Yagidu? He's using this plural thing. The issues here, the dvorim here, are all testifying Dova Emes La'amitoy, and then he says Lefi Inyonoi, according to its issue, according to its matter, which Lichori could also mean that it's miut. Before he says everything is like truth, Emes La'amitoy, but according to its issue. Lichori, it could be saying that generally it's not, but in a limited way. Why is he saying that? And then he says something which is another kasha. He says like this: you see, I'm like worthless. I'm too small to ever give a skama to anybody. All right? But here, so what? The only thing to give you an impetus to give a skama, even though you're too small to give a skamas, is that it's so great you have to give a skama. But if you said that the reason why you couldn't give us kamas until now is because these, all these mechaber was so much greater than you, I mean, who am I to give us kamas? So if he's greater, how much more the reason not to give us kamas on this one? Right? And then the terms that he gives is even more difficult than all. You'd expect, he says, yeah, but here, wow. Here we're talking about a mountain. Here we're talking about whoa. So therefore, I'm also giving us no. The humbleness of Mar has caused it. Duh. What's it got to do with anything? Reb Nosson explains in Lekutei Moharan that there are basically three realms of existence. Actually two, basic. One of them is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the essence, who is the isness of everything. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beyond time, and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beyond place. Then we have this world. This world is time and place. in order for something to be factual for us, it has to happen somewhere at some time. For us, if it happens at no time, in no place, it means it didn't happen. How can a realm of time and place have any connection between beyond time and beyond place? The Baal Tanya says this olam is totally Gashmi, because Baruch is total Ruchnius. How can total Gashmis have Shaykhis with total Ruchnius? There's nothing to grab on. Yet this world has no existence except the sustenance that it gets from beyond time and place, because that's the source of everything. But the two are diametrically opposed. There's no common language. Kodesh Baruch Hu speaks without time, without place. This world isn't time, it's in place. How does the conversion happen? How does the connection happen? And it's more than just that, because all the averis, all the avoinas, are wiped out in beyond time and beyond place, which we'll explain in a minute. And he says that the connecting link between beyond time and place is a unique concept which is called Muat HaMachzik Es HaMeruba. The limited that holds within it, that contains the a lot, the plenty, the much. In this time and place, you know, a gallon bottle holds a gallon, that's it. You cannot fit 5 gallons into it. Beyond time and place, there's no gallon, there's no constriction. Beyond time and place is the connecting link between the two is a concept that has to, on one hand, connect to beyond time and place, and on the other hand has to connect to us, to where we are, to time and place. That particular Lekutei is Muat HaMechilas HaMeruba. On one hand, it's Muat HaMechilas HaMeruba, which means it's beyond logic. How can a container of 1 gallon contain 5 gallons? It's beyond time and place. So it connects to Ein Sof. It connects to the realm of Kodesh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, there is something there. There is more there. There is Epis. That's our realm. This is where we live. And this is where these things are going on. This comes to play especially on Yom Kippur, where when into Beis HaMikdash we live in time and place, we do Lo Aleinu, the averes that we do in time, sometime, someplace. Somebody does an aver sometimes at a certain place. And everything gets, the kapara happens, Kodesh Baruch Hu, Yom Hazeh Chaper Lachem Ekol Avonei Seichem. This is, it happens by the realm of Kodesh Baruch Hu, which is beyond time and place. So what happens is that Klal Yisrael send a certain person that is a Muat HaMechilas HaMeruba, which is the Kohen Gadol, which is the Tzaddik. And it happens on Yom Kippurim, when we say Yamim Yutzaru V'lo Echad Bahem, days were created, and there's one day that is not included, and Rashi said it includes all the days within it. Zeh Yom Kippurim. So there's one day that includes the entire year. There's a Muat HaMechilas HaMeruba. And it happens, what does it happen? In Kodesh HaKodeshim. What is in Kodesh HaKodeshim? Even HaShir. Right? The entire world sprung out of Even HaShir. So Even HaShir is Muat HaMechilas HaMeruba in the Pnina of world. Existence, human existence exists in Olam Shana Nefesh. In the world, in place, Shana in time, in nefesh, person. So muta mechilas meruba on all these three concepts. Olam, Even Shiur, Shono is Yom Kippur, Nefesh is the Kohen Gadol, is the tzaddik that contains, that encompasses the entire Klal Yisrael. And this is Muta Mechilas Meruba. There, the connection can happen to beyond time and place, and Bayom Hazeh Chapel Lachem Kol Olam Seichem. Because you have to understand, the concept is that a din, any kind of din, any kind of verdict, any kind of determination can only be ameliorated and sweetened at its root. For instance, let's say that you work somewhere and you work in this department and you're doing one thing and you want to do something else. You can't just go ahead and do it. You have a manager. He's the source. He's the one that gives people the different assignments. If you want to change something, you have to come to him and ask him, may I stop doing this and start doing that? But if you want to move to another department, you can't ask him. He has no authority in our department. You have to go to the root that determines which department you're going to go, which is the manager of both the departments. And there you tell him, can I please leave this department and start working on the other department? V'chule, v'chule, v'chule. The more din you want to sweeten, the more you have to go to the source of where the determination is and sweeten it. The Baal HaTanya says that the Kaparas Avodah starts with the Ot Aleph of Shem Eke. He says because in the Shoresh you can say that any reason for a verdict or for a harsh verdict could be the reason for the opposite. And he gives a marshal, he gives a dogma, an example. And he says like this: look what happens before the Mabul. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to bring a Mabul. Why? A person is essentially bad, forget about it. I'm going to wipe the whole thing clean. After the Mabul, Kadosh Baruch Hu says what? I'm not going to bring a Mabul ever again. Why? Because a person is bad from the onset. So at the very spitz of the din, at the very beginning of the din, it can flip this way or that way. The very beginning of the din, the very beginning of the termination, is the place where beyond time and place, where there's no termination at all, meets time and place. Mut Mechilas Meruba. That particular Nekuda. The entire world starts there. Anybody who is proficient in quantum physics also is aware of the theory of their Hasoga, that reality starts with awareness. Awareness determines reality. Ad kedei kach that they make this test, they wanted to see whether an electron is a particle or a wave. Particle means it's one thing, it's moving. A wave means it's like a deformity in the media, so to speak. So they took a film, a photosensitive film, and they made two slits in it on the width of the wavelength of the electron, and they shot one electron at it. Now, if it's a particle, it means it'll go into either this slit or that. We can't go both. Either this or that, because it's a particle. Because the way it's coming in. But if it's a wave, it's like a wave. A wave will go in through two of them. And they found out that when they just measured, when they shot the electron, they measured, the photosensitive screen behind that, they found that both slits were entered, which means it's a wave. But when they put a mechanism to find out what was actually going on, like a camera, so to speak, a monitor, they found out that the electron went only through that slit where the monitor was. It's a particle. Where there's awareness, there's a particle. That's, a famous question. Does a tree that falls in the forest make a sound? Blah, 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 blah. Which finally comes out. It's just, a little curiosity, that according to quantum physics, dinosaurs never existed because nobody ever saw them. It's an interesting little. The point is, Rabbeinu says in Sipurei Maisis, in the Maisa of seven butlers, where comes the Maisa of the heart in the brook, that each day they need one more day to exist, and that one more day is given by what they call the Emet and Ish Chesed, the real Ish Chesed, that collects the Chasodim of the world. There is an awareness, a singular awareness, that collects the Chasodim and creates a day, creates time, creates place for this world.
You're saying if everyone stopped doing chesed, the world will cease to exist?
Yes.
So it's chesed.
Ki amarti oilam chesed ibone.
There's a big portion of Am Yisrael that isn't doing chesed.
As long as there is chesed in the world, that the tzaddik collects this chesed, there's time. The world can continue to exist. We take our existence so much for granted. It exists, right? But it's so tenuous. The past is no longer, right? The future is not yet. And the present is just a kiss between the not yet and the no longer, which is even less substantial than either of them. Right? We're almost like a hologram, an impossible hologram that keeps on existing. It is created by the tzaddikim, and the tool that they have to create it is the Torah. V'yi'omenu etzloi. Al tikra. The Torah is the tool. The Torah is the tool of creating life. Chazal learned Torah. And according to the level of the Torah that Chazal learned, what they did was they created a world. In this world, the greatness of the Kodesh Baruch Hu was revealed to a certain extent. There's a limit. As the Navi says, I'm not going to let the revelation of my honor to go outside, to go to the Chitzonium. There's a certain point, there's a certain wall, so to speak, there's a certain fence. If you're behind the fence, well, tough luck. You're out of luck. If you're on this side of the fence, okay. Outside, I'm sorry. Which means, according to the limit created by the Torah of Raboteinu, the world they were able to create with their Torah was that, Nebuch, what can you do? Am Yisrael is going to be in a certain matzav, and they won't be able to access Torah anymore. Asida Torah is Tokach Yisrael. Because there's going to be a situation of Anochi Rasta. And this double whammy, this double wrapping of concealment, you don't know the secret, you don't even know that there is a secret. You're out in cold. There has to be the tzaddik that creates a world that reveals such a revelation of the greatness of the Kodesh Baruch Hu to such an extent that basically redistricts, if you will, the grace of Kodesh Baruch Hu. In other words, instead of the fence being here, the fence is happening here. So all those that are here that used to be on the outside looking in are also included. They also have a chance. The tzaddik creates reality in which it is possible for you to access the emes of Torah. It doesn't do it for you. You are the one. You have to look for it. You have to search for it. As the Rebbe says in Torah Nun Vav, that even after you know the Kodesh Baruch Hu is hidden from you, it's very, very difficult to find them. Kal v'chomer, if you don't know at all. And in the Torah of the tzaddik, the Torah of everybody exists in this world. Once Moshe Rabbeinu came to the world, there's no way to access the Kodesh Baruch Hu without Torah's Moshe. Yaakov Avinu used to, his tikkun of tefillin was the makras that he put in the shiksas hatzon. That was all. If you don't have tefillin, you want to put, some twigs in the troughs, you're in trouble. It doesn't work that way. Why? It was Moshe Rabbeinu in this world, Nekudah. Every time, when Rabbeinu says, every time that tzaddik comes to the world, a new revelation of Torah comes to the world, there's no way to access the Kodesh Baruch Hu in the old way. Because a new existence is created. It's a new world. You can only go through the Torah's Moshe. And this is what the Choyz HaKodesh says. V'advarim me'elen yegidun. The words are self-explanatory. They say that they are speaking of themselves. Dovo emes la'amita lefi inyona, according to the din of every single person. Everybody's there. It's a new creation. And he says, I've never given a skama to anybody because, they're on this madrega and I'm on this madrega. When the Rebbe came to see Rabbi Yitzchak of Alik, and he took him out and he told him, all the tzaddikim of the dough, each one where madrega is holding. This is, the Rabbeinu says that the Magid was in the Chochmah, there's a Sichas around, Magid is the Chochmah, Hashem was in the Bina, but it's a Bina which comes beyond the Chochmah, but each one has his own set. But there is one tzaddik who's Pinchas Mota Mechilas HaMerubah. And in Pinchas Odom, what is Mota Mechilas HaMerubah? A novel. You are everything, and you hold that you're nothing. So regularly, I couldn't give a skama to anybody because I'm not holding them. Regularly, I'm holding. How can I testify on something where I'm not there? The Anova here is the thing that made me make it possible for me to testify. Because through his Anova, he includes everybody. I'm also there. I belong here. It's not just that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai reveals the Sefer HaZohar. The Sefer HaZohar, the Lekutei Moharan, the Kisvei Arizah, indeed all the limudim of all the tzaddikim in all the generations is alive. The Torah is alive. When we are learning this now, it's not that just you're gaining a certain medicum of knowledge, which is also true, which is atzlochas hanefesh, bevadai. Knowing this is atzlochas hanefesh. But it's a live mechanism. It's working for us. Once we So give it a dugma, Marshall. What's the pshat of being connected to the tzaddik or not? Tzaddik creates reality. Everybody lives in this reality. You can't be outside it. But the meaning of being connected to tzaddik is, imagine yourself a runner, a sprinter, that can run 100 meters, what is it? 9.8, 9.6, what is it today? Whatever. Something, speed, poof. You know, he's here, he's there. What is he going to do with all the seconds that he saved? I don't know, but... And then you have an old lady with a wheelchair. She cannot even get herself from point A to point B. But then you roll this lady onto a jumbo jet, and she can cover the distance between New York and Tel Aviv in 12 hours. And the world champion runner running from New York to Tel Aviv is going to take, what, 6 months? Okay? You have to get on the plane. And sometimes you need somebody to push you. But once you're on the plane, you're moving closer. I mean, grandma is moving closer to the speed of sound. Right? When the world sprinter, record-holding sprinter is somewhere in Newfoundland, panting. Like anything, right? When you're connected to tzaddik, it's not yours. I mean, you can wave your arm as much as you want. You can't fly. You have to be in the plane. But once you're there, you have to get on the plane. You have to buy the ticket. You have to pack your stuff. You have to do, otherwise you're not getting on the plane. It's not automatic rights. But once you're there, I mean, just think about it. Just think about it. How much the plane is doing, how much you're doing. You cannot get to SSO without the plane. The plane can go 100 times between New York and SSO. If you're not on it, nothing happens. That's what the Avinu says. You cannot without me, and I cannot without you. Every single Torah, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to learn of Lekutei Moharan is a live tikkun. Each and every one of us is going to change. Mamish. As we learn. A lot of the time we're not going to notice this. The Rebbe says in Aleph, Chelik Beis, says that there are 3 midas in the heart that if you blemish them, it lowers your Yis Shemayim. It's the Taivas Achila, it's Taivas Momen, and Taiva Yudua, the famous Taiva. Which means that whatever it is that you allow yourself to take a little peek there, and get more embroiled in it, the more it dampens your Yis Shemayim. And at the end, he says, the Rebbe says, this happens, the Nevuah diminishes, at the end, he says that what happens is that you fall away from tefillah. It dampens your Yis Shemayim. What do you have to go through, Nevuah, and this, and that, and he says that, and obviously the opposite is also true. In other words, the more you stay away from these 3 taivas, the more your Yis Shemayim becomes. Right? You increase your Yis Shemayim. But the thing is, for the Bechira to remain intact, there's an interesting mechanism at play here. You don't feel that your Yis Shemayim goes down. You watch movies with whatever goes in there. You help the Kodesh Baruch Hu with Parnasa. Take something that belongs to you. As the famous jokes goes, you need bitochen and 10,000 in the bank for yet bitochen. And kal vachomer, in all the other talis achila, whatever, you don't feel that you have lost your Shemayim. You feel the same person as always. And forget, when you go after those things and you cleanse yourself from those things, you become more Yis Shemayim. But the derech of people who are Yis Shemayim to feel they're still lacking Yis Shemayim. So you're not going to feel the way that your newfound Yis Shemayim is going to manifest itself is that you feel you have no Yis Shemayim. Right? So either way, you don't feel when you lose it, you don't feel when you gain it. So how do you know that it took place? That's what the Rebbe says at the end. You will see, if you lost your Shemayim, you'll fall off from tefillah. You fall off from contact with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if you gain your Shemayim, forget. You gain close to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. You get contact with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I definitely recommend to everybody. We're going to learn, Torah Lekutei Moharan. There is a tefillah, Lekutei tefillah about this. Lechu chazon miflos Hashem. The Rebbe says that when you take the Torahs of Rabbeinu and you daven them, you make tefillahs out of them. First of all, you're creating shashuim in supernal universes that have never come up before, ever. You're making yourself a new bria. You're creating yourself a new existence. You live in a new world. It's a live thing. It's not an academic endeavor that we're doing here. Even though, as I said before, the idea alone is atzlochas hanefesh. It's far deeper than that. We have more than 5 minutes. Bezrat Hashem, next week, we'll start to Aleph. Shkoyach.